Jerome Lester Horwitz made the world laugh harder than almost anyone alive in his era, and he did it while quietly falling apart at every seam. The man the world knew as Curly Howard, the spinning, shrieking, rubber-faced heart of the Three Stooges, spent his entire career performing pain as punchlines, and nobody in the room thought to ask how he was actually doing. What recently surfaced medical records, family correspondence, and studio documents reveal about his life isn't a feel-good redemption story. It's something far more uncomfortable and far more honest, and it starts long before the stroke that ended everything. Born on October 22, 1903, in Brooklyn, New York, Curly grew up the youngest in a working-class Jewish family where his older brothers, particularly Mo, commanded the attention in any room they entered. Quiet and withdrawn off stage, he showed almost no outward signs of the performer he would become. But the moment an audience appeared, something in him shifted completely. He carried no formal acting training, no theater school, no coach refining his instincts. But what raw instinct gave him, no classroom could have manufactured. His physical comedy operated on something deeper than technique, a kind of total bodily commitment to absurdity that audiences recognized as genuine because it was. The performance wasn't a mask he put on. In front of a crowd, it was the most real version of himself he knew how to be. Before joining the Three Stooges in 1932, he held scattered jobs and appeared in local theater productions, learning slapstick not from textbooks but from doing it wrong and repeating it until his body understood the timing on its own. When his brother Shemp left the act to pursue a solo career, Curly stepped in as replacement. He arrived at that first rehearsal with a full head of wavy auburn hair and a mustache, and when Mo and showman Ted Healy suggested he shave everything clean to better fit the group's image, he agreed with visible reluctance. That shaved head became one of the most recognizable silhouettes in American comedy, and the persona that followed, the high-pitched voice spinning on the floor, the woo-woo-woo, the certainly, the nyuk-nyuk-nyuk, locked itself into the cultural memory of a generation. The golden years at Columbia Pictures ran from 1934 to 1946, and across that stretch Curly appeared in nearly 100 short films. Punch Drunks in 1934, Disorder in the Court in 1936, and A Plumbing We Will Go in 1940 are still studied today as examples of precision slapstick timing and physical comedy craft. Curly sat at the center of all of it, his childlike energy and elastic face pulling scenes past mere gags into something stranger and more genuinely alive. Fans saw a lovable, chaotic clown who seemed to exist outside the normal laws of human behavior. The people standing next to him on set saw a man burning through himself to keep giving the camera what it needed. His personal life followed a different rhythm entirely, one shaped more by impulse and longing than by the comic timing that made him famous. His first marriage collapsed after 5 months, leaving him quietly devastated and more convinced than before that the kind of stability other people seemed to find wasn't something he was built for. On June 7, 1937, which happened to be the 12th wedding anniversary of Mo and his wife Helen, Curly married Elaine Auer. The couple had a daughter, Marilyn, born in 1938, and for a moment something looked like it might hold together. By June 1940, the marriage had dissolved under the weight of personal differences, his punishing schedule, and an increasingly erratic lifestyle that was becoming harder for anyone close to him to explain away. What nobody tracked carefully enough at the time was the physical toll mounting alongside the emotional one. His weight climbed steadily after the divorce from Elaine, and hypertension embedded itself and refused to leave. During World War II, when Columbia paused film production for roughly 7 months each year, the Stooges threw themselves into live tours for U.S. military personnel, sometimes performing multiple shows in a single day under conditions that exhausted even healthy performers. For Curly, whose body was already sending distress signals across multiple fronts, those tours were quietly brutal. The slapstick required real falls, sustained physical punishment, a body willing to absorb impact night after night across changing cities, and his body was running out of reserves. Mo ran a strict operation during work hours. No drinking, no exceptions, professional discipline regardless of what was happening off stage. Curly followed those rules while performing, and then the curtain came down and the other version of the night began. Nightclubs, bars, food, alcohol, and a revolving cast of companions filled the hours Mo's rules couldn't reach, and sleep became a consistent casualty. His body, already carrying excess weight under elevated blood pressure, absorbed damage that nobody in his professional circle named as damage, because naming it would have meant stopping, and stopping wasn't part of the plan. Financially, the disorder matched everything else. He earned well and spent faster than the money arrived. Jewelry, property purchased on impulse, expensive meals, gifts extended freely to people who may not have deserved them, and multiple occasions came within striking distance of bankruptcy. Mo stepped in, constructed a budget, and quietly took over preparing Curly's income tax returns, the kind of sustained intervention that tells you how serious the situation had become and how deep the bond ran between those two brothers underneath all the professional friction. The dog adoption habit reveals something different about who Curly actually was when the performance stopped. On tour, he repeatedly encountered stray animals, fed them immediately, formed attachments on the spot, and refused to leave without them. Hotel staff and fellow performers were regularly confronted with this sight. A famous comedian hauling multiple dogs through lobbies and dressing rooms and train cars, insisting he was keeping them until a proper home materialized. At home between productions, several dogs stayed with him permanently. They offered what the nightclubs and the romances couldn't sustain, uncomplicated affection with no performance required. Acting on Mo's persistent advice to find a stabilizing partner, Curly married Marion Buxbaum on October 17, 1945, after a courtship that lasted 2 weeks. 9 months later, the marriage had broken down into open arguments and contentious legal proceedings, and the press ran with the story, portraying him as unstable and erratic in ways that made his physical condition measurably worse. 2 months before that divorce was finalized in July 1946, Curly suffered a massive stroke on the set of a short film called Half-Wit's Holiday. He was 42 years old. His full-time career with the Three Stooges ended that afternoon. What the recently unearthed documents add to this story is where things become difficult to sit with. The stroke wasn't a sudden event arriving without warning. Medical experts reviewing his case today believe he had been experiencing transient ischemic attacks, precursor strokes for several years before the major one struck, warning signs that were either missed or quietly set aside because acknowledging them would have disrupted a profitable production schedule. Studio memos from Columbia Pictures, now accessible through family archives, show executives discussing how to keep him in front of a camera as long as his body permitted, recommending he be held available for just one more picture, and suggesting the true state of his health be kept from public view. Mo pushed back where he could. The studio system wasn't built to respond to that kind of pressure, and profits reliably won. The behavioral patterns his contemporaries filed under eccentricity, the mood swings, the disappearances from set, the compulsive spending, the impulsive marriages, the erratic decisions accumulating across his adult life, fit a clinical picture that mental health professionals today would approach with very different tools. Undiagnosed bipolar disorder, or a related neuropsychiatric condition compounded by years of heavy alcohol use, is what specialists reviewing his case now put forward. In the 1940s, that framework didn't exist in any practical sense for working entertainers, and whatever Curly was actually experiencing got filed under difficult personality and left there. After the stroke, a brief cameo in the 1947 short Hold That Lion served as the only comeback attempt, and the footage from that day makes immediately clear how much the man had changed. On July 31, 1947, he married Valerie Newman, and this final marriage held in a way none of the previous ones had managed. With Valerie, he found something closer to actual steadiness, and when their daughter Janie arrived in 1948, it gave him a focus the earlier years never provided. Hospitalizations continued. More strokes followed, each taking more than the last. Valerie remained through all of it. Jerome Lester Horwitz died in January 1952 at 48 years old, and the press reported it without the tribute that 100 beloved films and a decade of full theaters deserved. The comedy world moved on quickly. The mystery surrounding his decline turns out to need no mystery once the documents became available. A man in deteriorating health was kept performing by a studio that needed him functional, not well. A man experiencing serious psychiatric illness lived in an era with no real interest in treating it. A man who spent his career generating joy for millions, spent most of his actual life searching for somewhere quiet and safe to land, and never quite found it. The laughter he produced was genuine, and it has lasted. The suffering running beneath it was equally genuine and largely invisible until now. Those two things existed in the same person at the same time, and holding both of them doesn't diminish the comedy. It just makes the full picture honest.